Welcome to World Insight, coming to you live from Beijing on CCTV News. I'm your host, Tian Wei. On today's program, as the cyber tension between the United States and Russia intensifies, we'll look at how much of an influence Moscow may have in the race for the White House, or really. The Forbidden City's Palace Museum has truly moved into the modern age with a fresh digitalization strategy and campaigns to draw more young people, but have authorities gone too far and compromised the dignity of one of China's most precious treasures? We begin today's show with news on the cyber tension that has been dominating Russia-U.S. relations of late. The Kremlin has announced that 20 different bodies within Russia have been found to have espionage malware lurking in their networks. The revelation comes after American officials said a hacking of Democratic Party emails originated in Russia. While the espionage and the episode is further souring relations between the U.S. and Russia, many are concerned it might compromise November's presidential election in the United States. Is that true?
A game changer. As the Democratic Party email scandal intensifies, some American security experts believe Moscow is involved. But the Russian government explicitly denies the accusation, calling it absurd, emotional, and lacking in facts. Now Russia's Federal Security Service, the FSB, is saying the Kremlin was hacked. Malware was discovered on the systems of some 20 organizations, including several state agencies. Although the FSB didn't say who was behind the attacks, many are skeptical about the timing. And it's made the fragile relationship between the US and Russia even worse. Some in Russia are even wondering if Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump is getting involved. But Washington says it's not a political issue.
The United States counters cyber threats targeting all Americans, regardless of which political party they belong to. And that's consistent with the national security approach that's been taken by Democratic and Republican presidents for virtually our nation's entire history.
But his response seems weak, especially seeing as how this hacking issue is becoming a real issue in this presidential election.
And for Trump to both encourage that and to praise Putin, despite what appears to be a deliberate effort to try to affect the election, I think raises national security issues.
It is so far-fetched. It's so ridiculous. Honestly, I wish I had that power. I'd love to have that power.
Just last month, the White House issued new guidelines on how government agencies should respond to major cyber attacks. On whether Russia might be trying to influence the US election, President Obama's answer is anything is possible. But whether Moscow can be used to somehow change the course of the election, only time will tell.
It seems there's some tangle going on between Russia and the United States. For more on the U.S.-Russia cyber tension, we are joined here in our Beijing studio by Mr. Yang Mingjie, who is the Vice President of China Institute of Contemporary International Relations. Mr. Yang, welcome to our program. Meanwhile, joining us from Moscow, we are having Mr. Dmitry Barbich, political journalist and commentator at Sputnik International. Welcome as well, Mr. Barbich. Also in Washington, D.C., from the United States, we are having Ernest McDuffie, founder and CEO of the Global McDuffie Group, which focuses on cybersecurity consulting. Earlier, he has also worked for the American government as well. Welcome to our program, Mr. McDuffie. May I begin with you, Mr. McDuffie, by asking you, what do you make of the Russian side's latest accusation against the United States for cyber espionage of 20 or even more Russian government organizations?
Well, it's interesting. I think we've said on this program before that nations spy on other nations is kind of a routine activity that goes on all the time. And from my view, it seems that the success of an operation like that depends on how much it doesn't appear in the press. So this whole fiasco, seems to be not not have been that successful because we're all talking about it.
That's right. Well, Mr. McDuffie, we are all talking about it. It's all frontline now. So what's happening, Mr. Barbich? Do you agree, first of all, with the presumption made by Mr. McDuffie that, well, everybody's doing that for everybody and to everybody?
Well, I couldn't agree more, and I would like to point your attention that in the beginning of that scandal, and actually the scandal was started by the American media, by the New York Times, which, quoting unnamed Washington officials, said that DNC's emails could be hacked by the Russian hackers, and these Russian hackers might have government connection. If you remember, in the beginning, all the reports were unattributed, and I think they were aimed at hiding the real scandal. The real scandal was that these emails were genuine, and they showed that Bernie Sanders never stood a chance of becoming the Democratic Party's candidate. And this is the real scandal. I think the real scandal is that President Obama, for the first time, the acting president, is actively supporting one of the candidates while calling the other candidate a threat to the nation.
Well,
America has never seen it. So this scandal is being sort of silenced. It's been put on the back burner by I think, largely overblown scandal over these cyber espionage. So
Mr. Babish, may I just want to clarify with you? You seem to try to indicate that it is true that the Russians hacked the DNC, but the DNC was revealing it only because the DNC want to distract the attention away from the real content of the emails. But you agreed that Russia was possibly hacking the DNC headquarters and their email system. Is that what you're saying?
Well, to be frank with you, I will be frank with you, I don't know. But if you ask my opinion, I don't believe that Russian government is interested in the inner politics of U.S. parties.
Okay.
You know, the Russian government officials with whom I talked, they all say that any of these candidates is going to be bad for Russia.
Okay.
So there is very little hope that Trump will be different.
Well, let's put politics aside. Let's focus on this. Mr. McDuffie, you've been smiling throughout the process. Well, our Russian friend, Mr. Barbich, has been talking. So tell me about your response to Mr. Barbich's accusation that really what the Democratic Party has been doing, what the U.S. Democratic administration has been doing at this moment is to distract attention from the real contents of the email to focus on so-called espionage coming from Russia.
Well, I don't agree with that point that the
Are you a
Democrats
Democrat?
are somehow.
They would ask.
Yeah, yes, I am, but I am, but I think that's kind of beside the point. You know, the hack happened. The fact that the Democratic Party was warned that was potential is really just good policy, because anybody's system, you should be warned of the potential of it being hacked. The kind of things that were revealed in the email, from my viewpoint, were pretty trivial. I don't think they amount to a 3 million vote difference in the Democratic primary between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. You know, at best, the kind of people that were affected by, you know, the things that were revealed in the hack are pretty insignificant and kind of typical inside politics that happens on both sides all the time. So I don't think it was that significant. The fact that maybe not, and I agree, I don't know for sure that the Russian government was behind the hack. There's certainly significant evidence that the hack originated in Russia, but to what extent the government was actually behind it is always going to be speculative.
Okay.
But I think there is a real difference. I think there is a real difference politically in which candidate wins that election. You know, I agree that neither one would be very good necessarily for Russian relationships. Hillary has a long history of negative interactions with Russia, but the Trump candidacy is kind of like the chaos candidate.
All
I
right.
think to some extent.
We'll have opportunities to talk about the two candidates in some future programs, but let's focus on this so-called mutual espionage going on there in the cyberspace. And Mr. Yang, You heard our two panelists coming from Russia and the United States. So first of all, they take a laughing attitude at the accusations about the cyber espionage toward one another between these two countries. And secondly, our American guests seem to suggest these are only dirty tricks during a presidential election that a party or two parties would play on one another. And it has nothing to do with the cyber security accusations toward one another. Well, our Russian guests were saying, you know, we, Russia, may not that be interested in who is likely to be the next president, because it's not smart to try to imagine that one could influence the result. And secondly, both of the candidates seem to be not to our favor anyway. So, Mr. Yang, of course you're coming from China. You probably have a different view. What do you make of all of this drama that is going on these days?
First, I want to say something that even for the FBI and Department of State, their officials, it's very careful to use the words the hacker from Russia. They just said maybe something related to Russia, because of the IP may show it's in Russia, but from technical views, it's very difficult to find if the state government owns the IP. Maybe it belongs to personal and belong to individuals. But another challenge for the technical reason is that it's very difficult for any country to really trace back what the real hacker come from IP. For example, maybe they transfer from a third country to make attack.
That's right.
So that's why I think
either of the country being framed in a way, quote unquote.
But it's very interesting that this time, because of the presidential election in the United States, that even the two candidates had different views on that. For Trump said they want to invite Russia to make some
to hack more of the emails, as
so
he
that
said.
is, I think, political cause a lot of trouble, cause a lot of interesting stories for that case. But for serious thinking, I don't think that Russia and the United States officials, who is really in charge of that things, they have some the same views with that.
But this is a very interesting case study. We cannot prove any side of the accusation is absolute, 100% correct, because we only have public information. However, this is an interesting trace of words between the two sides, and also give us the suspicion whether in the future many of the political events or politicians involved in the political events would use so-called cyber espionage as a weapon against what they consider as the enemy, or an excuse to turn down or fight against what they consider as the enemy. Mr. McDuffie, do you think that should be the practice? What actually should be the bottom lines that governments have to observe all at the same time, at least certain kinds of moral level, at least among governments, to agree upon? Mr. McDuffie.
Yeah, you're right. This is probably the most difficult technical issue involved in cybersecurity, is attribution of who is actually doing the attacking. I agree with your guest there in Beijing that it's very difficult to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt. I mean, in the United States we have two different legal standards. One is beyond a reasonable doubt, and the other is the preponderance of the evidence. You know, one is used for criminal effects, and one is civil. And so, you know, you can make the judgments on the evidence that's out there and say, yeah, this is the preponderance of that. But you're absolutely right. Governments need to come up with mutually agreed upon standards for conduct in cyberspace that would trigger or not trigger, you know, some type of retaliatory action. And in this kind of nebulous, you know, arena where we're really not able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, and in some cases not even a preponderance of the evidence, we have to be very cautious, because, you know, retaliatory actions, particularly unjustified ones, have consequences and repercussions far beyond what the act itself might have been.
Right. Mr. Barbish, this time it is not just accusations coming from Russia. Russia was pretty angry because even some of the so-called basic infrastructure was being attacked according to the Russian side this time. So that certainly goes beyond what has been presumptively as the level that all countries would accept in terms of cyber espionage against one another. So what does Russia think about the current situation? Is Russia, from your perspective, likely to so-called counterattack or retaliate?
Well, I don't think that Russia would even reveal that 20 of its agencies were hacked by the American Special Services. And we don't yet know if indeed it is true, because the Russian government has not yet produced evidence.
That's right.
I think that the Russians would try to keep it under the carpet. I think the government, the Russian side, was forced to come up with something because suddenly this theme became so important during the US election. But to be frank with you, I don't think that any kind of hacking or eavesdropping on the phone would really have an effect on internal politics in a certain country. For example, 2 years ago, after the Snowden revelations, the United States admitted that they intercepted 70 million phone calls in France, 50 million phone calls in Spain. You know, the question is, does it really mean that the United States controls politics in France or Spain? I'm not sure, because you would need a whole staff of people to transcribe and to understand all of these talks in Spanish and in French, which most of Americans don't speak. So I would not exaggerate the importance of hacking, but I think it's a part of a broader problem. There is very little trust now between various governments, including the American government and the Russian government. Right. The Americans keep talking about their exceptional nation, exceptional right. And of course, returning to technical issues, you know, the problem is that the software and the hardware which can be used for hacking, it is produced in the United States. Very little of it is produced in Russia.
Okay, definitely there is a mistrust or distrust between the two sides. That's why things like this happen. That's why accusations like these can be widely accepted. But having said that, though, Mr. McDuffie, let me come back to you. The NSA, when Russia was accusing of others of spying on its own 20 government organizations, the NSA from the United States was suggesting it was not suggesting it has the legal authorities nor technical capabilities of so-called, quote, retaliate against any side if that side was trying to do cyber espionage on the United States. We do not know, once again, whether Russia did that or not. We don't have evidence from either side. But let me ask you this. What, once again, should be the bottom line? When one country assumed it was being attacked and being cyber espionaged, and then what can that be, the practice to the other country? We don't have an international agreement for that. That's why I look for you for some clue of basic standards. Mr. McDuffie.
Yeah, I agree. I believe that the U.S. and China, for example, in the last interactions that the high-level government officials had, actually agreed to not attack each other's critical infrastructure. It was part of the agreement that the two countries agreed to. I think that's a great first step. Real havoc can be executed upon a country when infrastructure is attacked. So, you know, this whole idea that you need some kind of international standards, maybe the UN needs to be involved, some neutral third party to develop working standards to what can and can't be accepted in cyberspace is certainly something that's needed. But I agree, the level of trust between governments is a crucial issue, and if you can't achieve that kind of trust between governments, right, there has to be some third party that everybody trusts, or you're not going to get anywhere. We kind of spiral out of control without some minimal level of trust between countries, and it really can have a negative impact.
But Mr. Yang, the problem is that they don't have the trust. if they have the trust, probably the so-called cyber espionage would be much lessened than what is already existing, even though we don't know the level, but we will assume. So, once again, what should be the bottom line? How can a bottom line be reached? Under the current international system, is there a possibility of reaching a bottom line? Will parties observe those bottom lines?
For me, I think it's possible for the future that the international community can reach some bottom line consensus on that issues. And because so far we couldn't reach some consensus, but we can make some process. Like the actors from the United States said, that China and the United States, we can make some agreement not to attack on each other's basic infrastructures. Even for Russia and the United States, this April, they make some dialogue on high-level officials to exchange their views, how to prevent.
But did they reach an agreement? That's the question.
No, they don't want to just prevent the espionage, but the important, the serious thing is how to prevent attack. It's not hacker, attack from cyberspace. That, I think, is a common threat, not only for Russia, United States, for China, but also for some small and middle countries. So that's why in the framework of the United Nations, China, Russia, and some Central Asia countries, we gave some proposal to some make international agreements on cyberspace security issues.
I see. And before we go, we only have 1 minute left, so maybe 15 seconds for every one of you, the three of you gentlemen. What do you say? Is cyber espionage still going to dominate the U.S. presidential campaign and probably many presidential campaigns around the world in the future? Should it be? Mr. Barbish, very briefly from you, 10 seconds if you can, 10 to 15.
Well, I hope that this issue will not be so important because it was largely invented, and I call on the people to stop Hillary Clinton because she is the real war candidate. That's a very short message from me.
Okay, I have to let the Democrat to respond to that, Mr. McDuffie.
I would agree that the cyber espionage isn't going to be the dominant factor in political elections as we go forward. I think defenses will get better and you won't see much of that. But I think for the world, I think more chaos in the world is not a good thing, and I think that's what the Trump candidacy will bring to the world.
Well, we got support from both camps, but final words from you. I hope you are neutral in this regard, Mr. Yang.
Okay, for me, I don't so worry about states, but maybe I have some worry about who will be the next nodal in the presidential elections. Maybe he will leak some very dangerous stories about the maybe Clinton and some other issues. That will be very serious and bombing for the president.
Well, that would be the hugest, biggest bomb, I would assume, for the year to come. But so far, we want to thank the three of you gentlemen for being with us and really share your perspectives on this interesting development of the U.S. presidential election. Yang Mingjie, Dmitry Barbich, and also Ernest McDuffie. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us. Stay with us here on World Insight. We've got our final segment coming right up. The Palace Museum at Beijing's Forbidden City has gone all digital in an effort to keep with the times. But has it lost a bit of its soul in the process? Some ask. Welcome back. You're watching World Insight on CCTV News. I'm Tian Wei. And now let's turn our attention to Beijing's Palace Museum, a landmark rich in historical and cultural significance. But it came under the spotlight recently when a somewhat irrelevant video featuring former Chinese Emperor Zhu Di dancing, rapping, and texting emoticons to his concubines. It went viral over the internet. Whilst many thought the footage lacked the class, others felt, well, it was making China's traditional culture more accessible to the general public. Which one is which?
A new video has gone viral on China's social networks. In it, a Ming Dynasty emperor emerges from a picture with a golden necklace and a pair of sunglasses and starts rapping about his life.
我有一个后宫妃子3000，大家都很羡慕我快活似神仙，但是
It's essentially an advertisement for a collaboration between tech giant Tencent and the Palace Museum. They're looking for ideas on how to rejuvenate the Forbidden City. The potential to profit from the Forbidden City's dazzling cultural wealth has made tech companies eager to get on board. As part of a 3-year deal, Tencent will work with the museum on various projects, including the creation of emoticons for QQ and games, animation and literature based on traditional cultural stories. The Palace Museum has also struck a deal with Alibaba to sell tickets, souvenirs and books on the company's online marketplace.
Today, people need a more user-friendly way to freely browse and select items for purchase. Now the Palace Museum has teamed up with Alibaba to help with that.
Meanwhile, it's also developed a string of interactive apps to complement its art collections. They've been praised for their design concepts and ability to make the art more accessible to the general public. Officials at the museum have worked intensively to promote the site through modern technology in recent years. Their efforts to expand the museum's influence are evident in how China's younger generation have taken to their new strategy.
Really interesting over there. For more on digitalization at the Palace Museum, we are joined in our studio by Professor Teng Jimeng from the American Studies Center at Beijing Foreign Studies University, and also David Moser, Academic Director of CET Chinese Studies at Beijing Capital Normal University, who himself is a keyboard musician. So what do you think? Emperor Zhu Di, coming from Ming Dynasty more than 600 years ago, is he a good rapper or not?
Yeah, I think he's got attitude. Yeah, definitely.
He's pretty got some good attitude.
He's got the authority. Let's put it that way.
Oh, okay. So how do you like that?
Well, you know, I think I've been in China long enough that to me it's kind of a shock also, because it suddenly seems a little bit undignified. You know, we always have these, images of the emperor and the majesty of the Forbidden City, and after all, he is the one who sort of created, or he sort of designed the city of Beijing. So we all owe all these buildings to him.
Beijing structure and
layout, yeah. So I understand the problem of making money. That's very important, and this seems to have succeeded in that, right? Mm-hmm. But to me, even as a foreigner, I find it a little bit off-putting and a little bit disrespectful. But I'd be interested to know, maybe young people don't feel that way. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't feel that the Egyptian mummies being made into different kinds of toys also a similar way of try to update people's knowledge about the past and also make it relevant today?
You know, if you made little keychains of Zhu Di, mm-hmm. or you had a lunch pail or something that had him on there, or the Kangxi or Qianlong or something like that, I don't think I would object to that too much. But don't you think going and making him a rap star is going a little bit further in the other direction?
Professor Teng, what do you think? Your American studies, probably you're more open-minded than the Chinese studies, David Moser.
Probably.
Well, I accept it. I think it's fun. I think it's kind of like a fun experience. Now you see an emperor like President Obama. Remember Obama?
He's not an emperor.
He's not an emperor, and he's still alive.
He's almost like the emperor, the most powerful person, right? I mean, as he's self-claimed most powerful person in the world. And so, in this sense, I think it's fun. I think it's funny. I think it's very kind of interesting experience or experiment to appeal to nowadays the internet generation. The rapper generation, this generation that's born in this very century. I mean, instead of us, I mean, we were basically, the old generation, born in the last century. And so it's kind of appealing.
Well, you're still young, first of all, I want to confirm that.
Okay.
But secondly,
Good.
The question is, will people take this as if they were learning the history? Or people take it only as a pure form of entertainment? Which one is this? Which one is important?
It's entertainment. Absolutely, it's entertainment. It's not education. I think this is almost the very fault, the comical side of the present Chinese society. I mean, everything got to be comical so that you can appeal to the general audience or the general public. And so, in a sense, I agree with David. I think you should not, I mean, in a sense, making such a person so undignified. I mean, it's absolutely the very emblem, the symbol of a nation.
Is doing rapping necessarily undignified? I mean, should that statement be, is that statement politically correct?
Well,
what would you, many of the millions of rappers around the world would say about this?
That's the problem. You rap, right?
I don't think, maybe I misused a term here. It's not so much that it's undignified, is that it trivializes him, and I think
Probably that's more accurate.
The other thing, though, is that certain people
should he and can he be trivialized?
Why
can't he be trivialized?
I would say that if you popularize it, you made it into popular media and internet, then yes, it becomes trivialized. People after a certain stage, people are able to separate the two. So, for example, you have in the United States, you have Lincoln is seen as a very dignified president. You go to the Lincoln Monument, but he appears in rap and cartoons and everything, and the same even goes true here for even somebody like Chairman Mao, who now is sometimes on cigarette lighters and all kinds of articles, which would have been unthinkable a long time ago. So I think, and maybe the Pope would be another example. Can you make fun of the Pope? Maybe not. But you can make fun of an old Pope. So I mean, I think it's a matter of time. People are able to make the separation. I think it just depends on if you have to keep it tasteful.
Right. Trivialize. Is there anything wrong with it? Having said that, though, can we trivialize everything? And can we continue to trivialize everything without really going to the real story of everything, or every emperor, or every dynasty in Chinese history?
Well, trivialization, once again, trivializing things is almost a sign of what we call the postmodern society. I mean,
well,
we just
in a way,
trivialize
yes.
things, right? So that everyone got the power, got the rights to trivialize, and then basically. But then once again, I think it is also about making highbrow culture really popular. I mean, not necessarily lowbrow, right? But I think it's making this highbrow culture appealing, more fun to young people, to this very new generation. So we're adapting.
The question is, after adapting, after attracting people's attention, what's next?
Right.
I think that is important. So will entertainment, pure entertainment like this, pure trivialization like this, necessarily going to lead to more efforts in providing more information, providing more critical analysis about history, about historical figures? I think that is the question. Have they done that?
Well, that's the danger in sense. If you trivialize things, you don't tell the real truth about history.
And people will be already happy about this.
That's right. And it's entertaining, and people forget about the real value of history. And so with Zhu for example, I mean, this is the emperor who makes the historic decision to move the capital from Nanjing to Beijing. I mean, this is actually a radical move from
That's starting the hundreds of years history of Beijing being the capital of China. But without the trivialization, probably nobody even know about Zhu Di, the emperor himself, especially for the younger generation.
Right. And that's why, I mean, Gugong, the Palace Museum, had lots of these educational classes, like I see at the MoMA, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I mean, modern of museum. And all these museums would entertain school kids from primary school, middle school, and even college kids. And so, in a sense, this is the first step. And then the next step is that you invite people over, interested people over.
Right. Will people have the appetite to go one step further than just being entertained by the trivialization?
I think you're right in saying a lot of young people who don't even maybe know who Zhu Di is, or will be at least attracted to that name, and most people will just take it as entertainment, will forget about it, but there'll be those who will find that as an entryway into it and want to learn a lot more about it. So for sure, it would have that effect, yeah.
But on the other hand, how much does this have to do with education? How much does it have to do with the Palace Museum, the Forbidden City itself, try to survive commercially and make sure it will have hundreds of years to go, while all the people in China and elsewhere will be interested in visiting and also even buy the souvenirs, getting to know more history?
Yeah, can I address that? I think when I read the material that your producer sent to us, I couldn't believe how much money these things are making.
Wow.
And when I look at the Palace Museum, I, as a foreigner, someone who's really interested in what they're doing and I would like them to do more of it, I know that it's very expensive to recondition and to renovate the Palace Museum. It's very expensive to take those old documents, the calligraphy, to scan them, to put them online, to make a good website. I know that takes a lot of money, and that's important to me as a scholar. And if this commercial thing enables that, then I'm all for it.
We did provide you with some information, and now we would like to share it with our audience as well. Some of the numbers. The Palace Museum has an official store even on Taobao, an e-commerce platform in China, similar to eBay, where official merchandise can be purchased. According to Beijing Business Today, take a look at this. The museum ranked about $150 million from its hundreds of different products last year alone, well up on the $90 million of revenue in the year 2013. The store has nearly 600,000 followers online. That's a huge number, even given the fact that the Forbidden City is something that you would definitely visit when you are coming to Beijing. But still, this is astronomical figures that we're talking about, especially when it comes to a museum. But should they? But does that mean, Professor Teng, they have done a great job, or does that mean they have actually switched to the wrong side of their work?
I don't think they're on the right. They're on the wrong side. I think they're on the right track. Or on the right track. I mean, in terms of raising the funding necessary for the maintenance, for, like, for example, putting everything online. I mean, all these work needs money. I mean, you need to pay people.
Right.
I mean, this is almost like the law of all museums around the world. I mean, take the Louvre, for example. I mean, when I was visiting Louvre the other year, I mean, I saw a Star Park over there. I mean, underground, there's a Star Park over there, and there are lots of these shops selling souvenirs.
We might not want to start another discussion about whether there should be Starbucks in the Forbidden City.
Going to be a war.
That has been going on for
years. He's done. He's gone.
For years in China. So, but having said that, though, what do you think, David?
About this issue?
About that it is making great money, and does it mean that they've been doing their job, or does it mean actually they've been doing the other's job rather than a museum's obligations?
Well, I think the museum's obligation is to first of all stay in business and to keep doing what they're doing. And in this day and age, I think that's probably a little bit harder to do. I think they've overblown and hyped and trivialized the Mona Lisa in Paris at the Louvre.
Right.
But on the other hand, that brings in millions of dollars of tourist money a year who just go to see that one painting. And I don't see anything really wrong with cashing in on what the Forbidden City has in terms of attracting people, even if it trivializes some of it. After all, a museum is for everyone, including kids.
Yeah, that's right.
We shouldn't downplay that.
Right.
And kids will spend a lot of money on trinkets and stuff on.
Well, when you think about museums around the world, they all have their own way of raising funds for themselves. Of course, selling tickets is one of those, the most common way. Well, though some of the museums around the world, they wouldn't even sell tickets, they would just open to the public. Of course, coming from the government for the historical preservation is another source of funding. And meanwhile, selling souvenirs and providing more product-related functions to the public and to business communities is another way. So, David, what do you think about all of these ways? Among them, what do you make of the Palace Museum's approach this time?
I think the Palace Museum has done a pretty good job until this is a new development. I agree. I think their website is great. It's getting better and better, and their English, Chinese, the bilingual.
I'm talking about funding here. So let's focus on this. What do you think about this way that they are looking for their next continuous source of funding?
I think that's what the problem is. They need to make it sustainable. And these things are not, the renovation they've already done is very impressive, but I know that it took many years to do it, and a lot of, it's not cheap to do. They also have all of these works in these underground sort of a bunker, that I know is very expensive to maintain. So, in this sense, I might forgive even some things I consider sacrilegious if they can just keep the thing funded, sure.
Well, trivialization, will that necessarily going to save the Forbidden City from its, let's just say, financial burdens?
Well, back to that question in terms of funding, I think the Palace Museum has done a wonderful job, not by trivializing, but I think by doing what they have to do, I mean, business-wise. I mean, ticket sales is one very main source of revenue for them, for these people, and they make huge amount of money, I mean, out there. For example, the daily attraction of a daily visit to Palace Museum is 80,000. 80,000.
It's amazing.
Right.
It's an amazing number. I mean, only with that revenue, I think Google can, in a sense, survive. But now with more sources of revenues, for example, like, say, cultural products related books and calendars and all these great replicas, I mean, in a sense, I think Google is not profiting. I mean, I think the director was correct. The Google director was very correct in saying we are not profiting, but we are also basically raising funding through these channels, but at the same time want to disseminate the knowledge, the culture. I mean, so that's their main business. If the museum is all about making money, that would be very, very wrong.
Is today's Palace Museum, with all of these promotional methods, necessarily in your eyes different from the old times? If yes, how different?
By the old times, you mean before these
Like just say when you
commercialization?
just arrived in China,
Oh, for sure.
which is like 30 years ago. I'm sorry
for
to
sure.
have revealed all of these information.
Of course, but you know, in the old times, that upkeep of the Forbidden City was all state funds. In other words, the government subsidized it 100%, basically, right? And the kind of renovations they want to do, and also to keep it going into the 21st century, is going to just take more and more money. And so I think, you know, this might be a good solution to make.
Professor Kang, what do you think?
I think it's the market. I think it's the market created that very demand also. I mean, give us more. I mean, expose us to more details of this Forbidden City. I mean, the name of itself is funny. It's a forbidden city, making everything out of bounds to the common people. Now, with the market economy, everything is made available to the people. I mean, it's now the visitors. And with this very opening and with these new measures, promoting measures, I think more details will be available right now.
Just look at that picture over there. I keep on looking at it while you guys have been debating about this.
Yeah.
This is extremely beautiful, a palace, one of the most impressive 5 palaces around the world, the Forbidden City here in China. We hope it will ever live because it is really a very important piece of history for mankind. But thank you so much, the two of you, for joining us and discuss this very interesting issue related to the latest development of Forbidden City. Teng Jimeng, David Moser. Really appreciate gentlemen for being with us.
Thank you.
That is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more of our program, visit our website. Just type in World Insights CCTV News into your search engine. You'll be able to find us, or you can also check out our YouTube channel. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone at the World Insight team, thanks for watching, and tune in again tomorrow for more insights from across China and around the world. Good night.